if we just use it as one of the warning case, then it will give an upper hand to the U.S. side in the negotiation, because the U.S. can easily criticize the Chinese, saying that, so you see, you are using political considerations to try to block this kind of very commercial project, then just as you did in the past. So if we look at the kind of negotiation, the 3 rounds of negotiations happened in the past few months between the U.S. and China teams in terms of the trade dispute. The Chinese actually is playing the cards on the very professional side. So basically, they are arguing with the U.S. under the WTO framework. They don't want to couple any other factors with the U.S. concerns. So basically, they just use this kind of set rules to tackle the U.S. kind of arguments. So in a way that at the moment, if apparently the U.S. may, for this case, is used by the Chinese regulators, then it's just, for the U.S., it's just to give them kind of another bullet to say that, okay, come on.
Okay, it sort of undermines the negotiation strategy that the U.S. is behaving unreasonably, China is reasonable, let's play by the rules. Obviously, then if you make something arbitrary, then it doesn't work.
Right.
Unless there's obviously some fundamental issues, but like you said, if the EU and US clear the merger on competition grounds, the Chinese market is a lot more regulated, there's a lot more domestic content, it is very hard to justify.
Yes.
And if you think about the merger process general is the merger approval a good weapon for indirect retaliation? Or you mentioned before, actually, antitrust in general is, but it might be much easier, for example, to start antitrust investigations of companies that are already active in China, or actually pick on the government to pick on targets that are already active in China, rather than waiting for a merger that's outside of their control. How do you think of the merger approval as an indirect weapon in this space?
Sorry, excuse me.
Versus other things we could do.
Excuse me. Would you please repeat again? It's gone on and on. Okay. Yeah.
So how do you think of, in terms of the indirect weapons that the Chinese could use? How do you think about the merger approval process versus other antitrust measures? So they could, for example, start, investigations into domestic, into U.S. players that already have a domestic presence and their behavior, or things like that, as opposed to waiting for mergers that are clear. Do you think? What do you think they would, if they were looking for an indirect weapon, or a signal? What would they do in this space?
I got you this time. I think in terms of using antitrust as a kind of indirect weapon, I think there will be several different kind of scenarios. Number one is the merger review process may be prolonged. So in a way, it will, using this kind of review process as a good kind of communication channel, try to convey the pressure try to give the pressure to the merging parties and try to let them convey it back to the company. That's one. Number two is probably the Chinese may open another round as a kind of CFIUS did. So basically, it's taking the kind of the consideration on the national economic security or on national security. So basically, it will couple more closely between antitrust concerns and the concerns on the threats of the national economic security and net threat on the national security. So this is a totally kind of a new ground. And so far, I haven't seen the Chinese did that, but from the the Chinese regulators, but from the Chinese reports to the WTO, I get probably there were 2 cases. The Chinese, while they are reviewing the cases, they review that on the grounds of the national security basis. But eventually,